An ancient object can hide a secret life for centuries. These artifacts are not just relics. They are silent witnesses to forgotten eras, carrying stories that challenge everything we think we know about history. By the end of this journey, you will uncover the hidden narratives behind history's most mysterious objects, stories of intrigue and discovery that textbooks often miss. We will investigate an ancient device so advanced it seems out of place in its own time, and a manuscript written in a language that has never been deciphered. What does the true value of an artifact really lie in? That corroded bronze lump, resting in silence for 2,000 years, held a secret far grander than any statue. When sponge divers first pulled it from the seafloor near Antikythera in 1901, they had no idea they were recovering a fragment of ancient genius. It was not until decades later that researchers, using advanced imaging techniques, peered inside the calcified crust. They found a breathtakingly complex clockwork of interlocking bronze gears, a miniature universe engineered from metal. This was not a simple timekeeper. It was a cosmic calculator, a device that could predict the motion of the sun and the moon, forecast eclipses, and even model the irregular orbit of our moon. The mechanism's front dial displayed the Greek zodiac and the Egyptian calendar, while its intricate back dials tracked the timing of the Olympic Games and the cycles of known planets. To achieve this, its creators engineered a system of differential gears, a level of mechanical sophistication that historians once believed was not invented until the 16th century. This single object shatters our timeline of technological progress. It tells us that the ancient world possessed a depth of scientific understanding and mechanical skill that was simply lost for over a millennium. The genius who designed this was a mind on par with a Leonardo da Vinci, working more than 1,000 years earlier. So why was such a masterpiece of engineering on a merchant ship? Was it a unique commission being delivered to a wealthy patron, or perhaps a scholar traveling with his most prized possession? Its journey ended at the bottom of the sea, and with it, a whole branch of ancient technology seemingly vanished from history. This forces a humbling question. If something this advanced could be lost for so long, what other marvels of the ancient world still lie buried, waiting to challenge our assumptions once more? While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a lost peak of scientific knowledge, another artifact presents a mystery of pure, undeciphered information. Deep within the vault of a university library lies a book that has stubbornly refused to give up its secrets for over 6 centuries. The Voynich manuscript is a handwritten codex filled from edge to edge with elegant, looping characters from an alphabet that does not exist anywhere else in the world. Its pages are crowded with illustrations that are both detailed and deeply strange. You see plants with unnervingly fleshy roots and leaves that spiral in impossible ways, botanical specimens that match no known species on Earth. You find circular charts of the stars that do not align with any recognized constellations, and intricate drawings of tiny, nude women bathing in what appears to be a system of interconnected green pools. A Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich brought the manuscript to public attention in 1912, but its origins are far older. Radiocarbon dating firmly places its vellum pages in the early 15th century. For all that time, its message has remained perfectly locked away. This is not for lack of trying. The finest military codebreakers from the Second World War, the very minds who cracked enemy ciphers, turned their formidable skills to this ancient book and were utterly defeated. Modern supercomputers running complex statistical analyses have found patterns in the text, suggesting it is structured by a real language with syntax and grammar, yet the meaning of every single word remains a complete enigma. So what was its purpose? Why would a medieval author or artist spend an immense amount of time and resources using precious inks and vellum to create a beautifully illustrated book that was, from the start, completely unreadable? Some theorists argue it is an elaborate, centuries-old hoax, crafted to fool a wealthy collector. Others propose it is a coded scientific text, perhaps a pharmacopoeia of herbal remedies where the strange plants are symbolic representations of their uses. There is even a compelling idea that it is written in a constructed language, a personal cipher of an alchemist or a visionary, meant to conceal profound secrets from all but the initiated. The manuscript's true nature might be something even more extraordinary, a unique form of artistic expression where the very act of writing, not the content, was the point. It stands as a permanent question mark, a reminder that the past can create puzzles that our most advanced tools still cannot solve. It challenges our belief that with enough effort, we can understand anything from history. What does it say about human nature that we are so drawn to a mystery that offers no answers? This same drive to find meaning in the mysterious extends to artifacts of a very different kind, where the puzzle is not in a secret code, but in the very hand that made them. Perhaps the most provocative mystery is one that suggests our ancestors may have harnessed a fundamental force of nature long before we ever credited them. In 1936, during an excavation at a 2,000-year-old village near Baghdad, an archaeologist uncovered a cluster of rather mundane-looking clay jars. One of these unassuming artifacts would eventually become the center of a debate that continues to this day. Inside the simple ceramic pot, researchers found a sealed copper cylinder, and within that, an iron rod suspended by an asphalt plug. To the untrained eye, it was just a curious assembly of old parts, but to a handful of open-minded scientists, it bore a striking resemblance to something far more modern, a primitive electric battery. If this interpretation is correct, this object, now known as the Baghdad battery, implies a knowledge of electrochemistry in the ancient world that predates Alessandro Volta's official invention of the voltaic pile by over a millennium. The principle is simple yet profound. If the jar was filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, the electrolyte would react with the two different metals, causing electrons to flow from the iron rod to the copper cylinder through the liquid, creating a small electric current. Researchers who have built and tested replicas, such as Dr. Arne Egebrecht, confirmed it could generate a consistent voltage of about 1 to 2 volts, roughly equivalent to 2 modern AA batteries. This opens a fascinating realm of possibilities. What could such a small amount of ancient power have been used for? One compelling theory is electroplating, the process of using electricity to bond a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal surface. Artisans could have linked several of these jars together to create a stronger current, allowing them to gild intricate jewelry or statues with a flawless, enduring finish. This would explain the existence of exquisitely plated ancient objects whose craftsmanship has always been somewhat puzzling. Another idea points toward ancient medicine, where the mild tingling shock from the device might have been used for therapeutic or analgesic purposes, a form of early shock therapy. Or perhaps its purpose was more mystical, used by priests in religious ceremonies to produce a tangible, seemingly magical sensation of divine power for the faithful. Skeptics, of course, offer a more mundane explanation, suggesting the jar was simply a secure storage container for precious scrolls, with the iron and copper components acting as protective seals. Yet, the discovery of acidic residue inside some of the jars lends significant weight to the electrochemical theory. this single, humble pot forces us to reconsider the intellectual landscape of the ancient world. Was this a chance discovery that was never fully developed, or was it part of a broader, lost understanding of physical science? How many other simple objects in museum cases around the world have we mislabeled because we underestimated the ingenuity of their creators? The idea of ancient electricity is a powerful jolt to our historical timeline, suggesting that the path of invention is not a straight line but a complex web with many forgotten branches. This theme of an object seeming to defy its own time finds an even more dramatic expression in another artifact, one that appears to challenge the very laws of physics as we know them. High above the dry Peruvian desert, a sprawling masterpiece lies invisible to those standing on the ground. The Nazca lines are a collection of massive geoglyphs, enormous drawings carved directly into the Earth's crust. Created by the ancient Nazca people over a 1,000-year period, this vast network includes perfectly straight lines that run for miles, complex geometric shapes like trapezoids and triangles, and stunningly elaborate figures of animals. A colossal hummingbird, its beak perfectly pointed, stretches across the landscape. A massive spider, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and a giant humanoid figure known as the astronaut all form a gallery so immense it can only be comprehended from the sky. The largest of these figures spans over 1,200 feet, a scale that defies easy understanding. How did a culture without powered flight conceive of and execute art on such a grand aerial canvas? The most widely accepted theory points to the heavens, but not in the way you might think. For decades, mathematician Maria Wright devoted her life to protecting and studying these fragile lines. She proposed that they formed a sophisticated astronomical calendar. Certain lines align precisely with the sun's position during the summer and winter solstices, while others may point to the rising of important stars or constellations. In an environment where water was life itself, tracking celestial cycles to predict seasonal rains for planting would have been a matter of survival. These lines were not just pictures, they were a cosmic map, a sacred interface between the community and the gods they believed controlled their fragile world. The construction itself was a monumental feat of organization and skill. The Nazca people did not build these lines up, they created them by carefully removing the top layer of dark, sun-baked stones to reveal the contrasting light-colored sand beneath. This technique created sharp, clean lines that have endured for centuries. The precision required to maintain the proportions of a giant monkey or a perfect spiral over such vast distances is astounding. It suggests the use of simple but effective surveying tools and a highly coordinated communal effort, likely involving hundreds of people working from a master plan laid out with ropes and stakes. This was a society-wide project, a testament to a shared belief system. Of course, the sheer scale and mystery of the lines have inspired more speculative ideas, including the controversial notion that they were landing strips or navigation aids for ancient astronauts. Mainstream archaeology, however, finds the answers firmly on the ground, rooted in the spiritual and practical needs of the Nazca culture. They were likely ceremonial pathways, walked during rituals to invoke deities of water and fertility, their full form known only to the gods looking down from above. This profound connection between an earthly creation and the celestial realm finds a curious parallel in a much smaller, yet equally mysterious, object discovered half a world away. Buried in the ruins of a Minoan palace, a single clay disc holds a message from a lost world. In 1908, archaeologist Luigi Pernia made a stunning discovery in the ancient complex of Phaistos on the island of Crete. He unearthed a round tablet of fired clay, roughly the size of a small plate, and unlike any other artifact found before or since, Its entire surface was covered, front and back, with a continuous spiral of mysterious symbols. There are 241 individual impressions, but they are made from just 45 distinct signs. You can see a helmeted head, a bird in flight, a walking man, a shield, a bee, and a host of other figures from the daily life and natural world of the Minoan civilization. Each symbol was not carved by hand, but stamped into the soft clay with a purpose-made punch, a technique that makes this humble disc one of the most revolutionary objects ever found. This was movable type printing, a technology that would not become common for another 3,000 years. Someone in the second millennium before the Common Era had a set of reusable type and used it to create this permanent record. But a record of what? The sequence of symbols is clearly structured, grouped into sections that are divided by incised lines, suggesting words or phrases. It reads from the outer edge of the spiral toward the center, a journey inward into a complete linguistic mystery. The problem is that the script on the Phaistos disc is utterly unique. No other example of this writing has ever been discovered. It is an orphaned language, isolated in time and space, with no Rosetta Stone to provide a parallel translation. This isolation has made it a playground for theorists and scholars for over a century. Is it a prayer to a forgotten goddess, a list of royal possessions, a treaty between kingdoms, or perhaps the rules for a sacred game? Some have even proposed it encodes a complex mathematical formula. Without more examples, every proposed translation is little more than an educated guess, a story projected onto the silent symbols. The disc's very existence raises profound questions. Was this a solitary experiment in printing that died with its inventor, or does it hint at a wider, lost practice with other printed texts waiting to be found, perhaps on perishable materials like cloth or wood that have long since crumbled to dust? This artifact is a double mystery, hiding both its message and the story of its own revolutionary technology. It stands as a stark reminder that an entire system of knowledge and communication can vanish, leaving behind only a single, tantalizing clue. This same haunting silence surrounds another set of symbols, one that has captivated and frustrated the world for generations. Preserved within the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin rests a simple linen cloth that carries one of history's most debated images. The Shroud of Turin bears the faint, haunting imprint of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion, a detail that has led millions to venerate it as the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ. For centuries, this artifact has existed at the turbulent intersection of unwavering faith and rigorous science, its origins shrouded in as much mystery as the image itself. Its first clear historical appearance was in the 1300s in France, but its journey before that moment is a blank page. The central question is as profound as it is simple. How was this image created? The figure is not a painted portrait but a subtle, straw-colored discoloration on the topmost fibers of the linen threads. It is also a perfect photographic negative. When first photographed in 1898, the negative plate revealed a startlingly clear and positive likeness, a level of detail completely invisible to the naked eye. This discovery catapulted the Shroud into a new era of scientific scrutiny. How could a medieval forger, centuries before the invention of photography, conceive of and execute a perfect negative image? Researchers have proposed countless theories. Some suggest a natural chemical process called a Maillard reaction, where gases from a decomposing body interact with sacred oils on the linen over time. Others point to the possibility of a very subtle application of pigment, though no definitive paint medium has ever been identified. The most dramatic hypothesis proposes a sudden, intense burst of radiant energy, a flash of light that somehow scorched the cloth with a perfect anatomical representation. Yet, each theory faces significant challenges, and no single explanation has managed to satisfy all critics. The scientific debate reached a fever pitch in 1988 when radiocarbon dating tests were performed on a small sample of the cloth. The results dated the linen to between 1260 and 1390, squarely within the medieval period. This seemed to deliver a definitive verdict, branding the shroud as an ingenious forgery. But the story did not end there. Proponents of the shroud's authenticity immediately questioned the findings. They argued that the sample taken might have been from a section of the cloth that was expertly rewoven during medieval repairs, effectively contaminating the test with newer threads. They also point to pollen grains found on the shroud that are native to the region around Jerusalem, suggesting a Middle Eastern origin far older than the carbon dates allow. So, what are we to believe? Is this the most elaborate and inexplicable hoax ever perpetrated? Or is it a genuine relic that somehow defies our best methods of dating? The shroud's power may lie less in its answer and more in the questions it forces us to ask about history, belief, and the limits of our own knowledge. It speaks to a deep human longing for a physical connection to the divine, a desire to touch a piece of the sacred. This profound blending of the tangible and the spiritual finds a curious echo in an object that was both a tool of science and a bridge to the gods. The cool, flawless surface of a crystal skull seems to capture light and mystery in equal measure. These objects, often attributed to ancient Aztec or Maya artisans, emerged into the public eye during the 19th century, presented as stunning relics of a lost world. They were said to hold psychic energies, to be capable of emitting their own light or sound, and were sometimes described as data storage devices for an advanced civilization. The most famous of these, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, came with a story fit for an adventure novel, supposedly discovered by the explorer's adopted daughter beneath an ancient altar in a jungle ruin. Yet, for all their legendary allure, the truth behind these artifacts is far more modern. When scientists subjected the skulls to the scrutiny of high-powered electron microscopes, they found telltale marks that told a different story. The microscopic grooves and scratches were perfectly consistent with the hard, fast wheels of modern rotary tools, equipment that simply did not exist in the pre-Columbian Americas. The evidence points overwhelmingly to their creation in 19th century Europe, likely in workshops in Germany and France, where they were crafted to feed a growing fascination with the exotic and the ancient. They were beautiful fakes born from a desire to possess a piece of a romanticized past. So why does their power persist even after the truth has been revealed? Their enduring appeal lies in the perfect story they represent. The human skull is a universal symbol, reminding us of mortality, while the pristine crystal suggests purity and eternal knowledge. This combination of the mortal and the immortal, the earthly and the divine, is irresistibly compelling. They are blank canvases onto which we can project our deepest hopes for forgotten wisdom and connection to something greater than ourselves. Their story is not one of ancient magic, but of a very human magic, the power of a good story to transcend fact. This journey from revered relic to exposed forgery mirrors the fate of another object, one that was similarly misinterpreted for centuries, not as a tool of power, but as a simple toy. That single silver coin found in the soil of Maine carries a story of epic journeys. In 1957, archaeologists carefully sifting through the remains of a prehistoric Native American village unearthed something that did not belong. It was a small, worn silver coin, a Norwegian penny minted more than 800 years earlier during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre. This was not just any old coin. It is, to this day, the only confirmed Norse artifact ever discovered in the United States outside of the known Viking settlement at Elance Orks Meadows in Newfoundland. Its presence in a Penobscot settlement from the 12th or 13th century is a historical thunderclap. How did an object from a Scandinavian mint end up deep in the forests of North America, centuries before the voyages of Columbus? The most compelling explanation lies not in a lost Viking longship, but in the vast and sophisticated trade networks that already connected indigenous peoples. The Goddard site where it was found was no small camp. It was a major coastal trading village, a hub where goods traveled over immense distances. It is easy to envision the coin's journey, not as a direct route from a Norse explorer's hand, but as a slow, patient migration. Perhaps it was traded from a Norse smith in Greenland to an Inuit hunter, then passed south along the coast from one community to the next, valued not as currency but as a curious piece of shiny, worked silver. It would have been a rare and fascinating object moving through a chain of barter that stretched for thousands of miles until it finally came to rest in what we now call Maine. Of course, such a revolutionary find is met with healthy skepticism. Could this simply be a case of modern contamination? Maybe a coin collector from the 19th or early 20th century dropped it on the site long after the village was abandoned. Yet the archaeological evidence strongly counters this. The coin was not found on the surface. It was recovered from a carefully excavated layer of earth, a stratum that was undisturbed and securely dated to the prehistoric period. It lay among the stone tools and pottery fragments of the people who lived there long before European colonization. This context makes its authenticity as a medieval object in a Native American context very difficult to dismiss. If we accept its genuine nature, the Maine penny forces a dramatic rewrite of our history books. It suggests that the Norse exploration of North America was not just a fleeting, failed settlement in Newfoundland. It hints at sporadic, perhaps recurring contact, and more importantly, it reveals that goods and ideas were being exchanged between the Old World and the New for hundreds of years before sustained European contact began. This single coin is a tiny, metallic whisper of a much larger, untold story of human connection across the ocean. It makes you wonder what other small, overlooked artifacts in museum drawers might be hiding similar world-altering journeys, waiting for a curious eye to recognize their true significance. Deep in a Chinese mountain range in 1938, an archaeologist named Kai Pu-te reportedly made a discovery that would fuel imaginations for decades. He entered a series of caves in the remote Bayan Kararula Mountains and found something utterly perplexing. Scattered across the cavern floor were skeletal remains, but these were not ordinary human bones. They belonged to individuals of strangely small stature, and beside them lay hundreds of stone discs, each with a perfect hole in its center and a fine, spiral groove winding from the edge to the center, like an ancient phonograph record. These were the Dropa stones. The legend grew when researchers supposedly examined the grooves under magnification and found that they were not grooves at all, but a continuous line of tiny, unknown hieroglyphic characters. The story they told was extraordinary. It was said to be the account of a people called the Dropa, whose spacecraft had crash-landed in the mountains thousands of years ago. The survivors, unable to repair their ship, were stranded and eventually integrated with the local human tribes, their story preserved only on these stone discs. Proponents of the tale added scientific sounding details to bolster the claim. They said the stones, when analyzed, contained high levels of cobalt and other metals, suggesting an otherworldly origin or advanced manufacturing technique. The entire narrative seemed to be a perfect match for ancient astronaut theories, a tangible piece of evidence for extraterrestrial contact in humanity's distant past. Yet, when you search for this evidence, it vanishes like mist. No major museum in the world holds a single Dropa stone. No peer-reviewed scientific journal has ever published an analysis of them. The original archaeologist, Kai Pu-te, is a spectral figure who cannot be reliably traced in academic records. The entire story first appeared in a German magazine and was then popularized in books during the 1960s and 70s, a time when public fascination with UFOs and lost civilizations was at its peak. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the stones completely, classifying them as either an elaborate hoax or a case of mistaken identity, where known Chinese by discs, which are ritual artifacts with a center hole, were misinterpreted and given a fantastic backstory. So why does this myth hold such power over us? The Dropa stones represent a deep and enduring human desire. We look at the vast, empty spaces in our historical records, and we yearn to fill them with something extraordinary. The idea that our ancestors were visited by beings from the stars is a compelling answer to the question of how ancient cultures achieved so much. It is a story that simplifies complexity, turning human ingenuity into a gift from the gods, or in this case, from the Dropa. These tales persist not because of their evidence, but because of the void they fill in our collective imagination. They speak to a hope that we are not alone in the universe, and that our history is far more spectacular than we ever realized. This same tension between a captivating story and a frustrating lack of proof surrounds another object, one that has been called the most beautiful archaeological forgery of all time. A solitary walker in Texas one afternoon in 1936 noticed a curious piece of stone, a lump of rock with what appeared to be a piece of wood jutting from its side. Driven by curiosity, he cracked the stone open. Inside was not a fossil, but a perfectly formed iron hammerhead, its wooden handle still firmly wedged within the stone casing. This was the London hammer, an artifact that would ignite a firestorm of debate. For those who challenge established history, this was undeniable proof. The rock encasing the hammer was identified as an ancient Cretaceous rock formation, dating back over 100 million years. How could a modern-looking tool be sealed inside stone that formed when dinosaurs roamed the earth? It seemed to be a clear anachronism, a tool impossibly out of its time, suggesting that an advanced human civilization existed in the deep, distant past. The scientific explanation, however, reveals a different yet equally fascinating story of natural processes. Geologists point to a phenomenon known as concretion. Under the right conditions, especially in mineral-rich water, dissolved limestone can precipitate and harden around any object, forming a solid nodule of rock in a surprisingly short amount of time, geologically speaking. A hammer from the 1800s lost in a creek bed could have become completely encased in a hard limestone shell within a few centuries, or even faster. This does not make the rock around it 100 million years old. It simply means the minerals that formed the concretion are of a type common to that ancient period. The hammer itself offers its own clues. Metallurgical analysis shows the iron of the head is unusually pure, lacking the slag inclusions typical of ancient ironworking, but perfectly consistent with the techniques of a 19th century blacksmith. The wooden handle is partially coalified, a chemical process where organic material turns towards coal, a transformation that can and does occur over a few hundred years, not millions. Despite these straightforward scientific conclusions, the London hammer holds a powerful allure. It has become a centerpiece in creationist museums, a tangible symbol for narratives that posit a much younger Earth or a lost golden age of humanity. Its enduring appeal speaks to a profound human tendency. we are naturally drawn to evidence that seems to overturn conventional wisdom, to objects that whisper of forgotten truths and hidden histories. This hammer is not really a mystery of ancient technology, but a mirror reflecting our own desire for the world to be more mysterious, more extraordinary than our textbooks might allow. It challenges us to ask why we are so willing to believe in the extraordinary, even when a simpler explanation is at hand. This tension between a captivating story and a mundane truth finds a parallel in another object that seems to defy its own time, not trapped in stone but lost in the static of history. A simple wooden bird model, resting in the dust of an Egyptian tomb for over 2,000 years, seems to hold a secret it was never meant to reveal. Discovered in 1898 at the Saqqara burial site, this artifact is no larger than a human hand, carved from sycamore wood with the graceful lines of a bird in flight. Yet, its most striking feature defies all ornithology. Instead of the horizontal tail feathers found on every bird in nature, the Saqqara bird has a distinct upright tail fin, a feature that looks less like a part of a living creature and more like a component of an aircraft. This single, anomalous detail has launched one of the most intriguing debates in the history of archaeology. Is this merely a stylized representation of a falcon, perhaps a sacred symbol of the god Horus, or could it be something far more revolutionary, a scale model of a working glider? This question captivated Dr. Khalil Messiha, an Egyptologist who studied the object in the 1970s. He became convinced that the artifact was not a bird at all, but a detailed model of a monoplane, a testament to ancient aerodynamic principles. He noted that the craft's wings are perfectly angled to provide lift, and that vertical tail fin acts exactly like a rudder, providing the stability needed for sustained flight. To test his theory, researchers built precise replicas of the Saqqara bird. When launched with a simple throw, these models did not tumble to the ground like a child's toy. They soared. The wooden glider demonstrated a surprising and graceful flight capability, able to glide for considerable distances with minimal adjustment, its unusual tail fin keeping it steady and level in the air. This practical experiment suggested that its original creator possessed not just artistic skill, but a profound, intuitive understanding of the forces that keep an object aloft. Skeptics, however, offer a more grounded interpretation. They argue that we are projecting our modern fascination with flight onto an ancient culture that saw the world through a different lens. The model could indeed be a falcon, with its vertical tail simply being an artistic convention or a result of the wood breaking and being reshaped over the centuries. It might have been a ritual object placed in a tomb to symbolize the soul's journey, or even a popular toy for an elite child. The most significant point against the glider theory is its utter isolation. No other artifacts like it have ever been found in Egypt. There are no hieroglyphic texts describing flight, no murals depicting aircraft, and no evidence of a wider tradition of aerodynamic experimentation. It stands alone, a single, silent question mark, so we are left to wonder, why would an artisan carve a bird with features that do not exist in nature? Perhaps the answer lies not in advanced technology, but in sharp observation. The ancient Egyptians were masterful students of the natural world. Maybe a particularly gifted craftsman watched birds riding thermal currents, noticed how their wings and tails shifted to catch the air, and attempted to capture that essence of motion in wood. The resulting model, while not a blueprint for a machine, could have been an expression of a deep, intuitive grasp of a natural principle. The Saqqara bird forces us to consider the boundary between inspired observation and applied science. It may not prove the existence of ancient airports, but it whispers of a lost thread of inquiry, a path of understanding that was perhaps never fully pursued. This tantalizing glimpse of potential knowledge finds a strange and powerful echo in another object, one that seems to channel the very forces of the sky itself. A rockhound in California cracked open a seemingly ordinary geode in 1961, expecting to find the crystalline cavity typical of such stones. Instead, his hammer blow revealed something utterly incongruous. Nestled within the rock was a mechanical object, its porcelain insulator and a rusted metal shell unmistakably resembling a modern spark plug. This was the Coso artifact, and its apparent age was the source of immediate astonishment. The hard, outer layer encasing it was initially dated to an incredible 500,000 years old, a claim that sent waves of excitement through circles believing in ancient advanced civilizations. Here, it seemed, was undeniable proof, a piece of 20th century technology impossibly trapped in prehistoric stone. The narrative was irresistibly compelling, suggesting that a sophisticated society with combustion engines had walked the earth long before recorded history. How could such a thing be possible? The answers uncovered by scientific scrutiny are a masterclass in how natural processes can conspire to create perfect historical illusions. Investigators began by taking a much closer look at the object itself. X-ray analysis pierced the rocky shell, revealing the internal components in stark detail. Inside were a rusted spring, a metal rod, and a copper sheath, all arranged in a configuration that was not just similar to, but identical with, a champion spark plug from the 1920s. The so-called geode was also a misidentification. True geodes form from gas bubbles in volcanic rock, slowly filling with crystals. This object was a concretion, a lump of hardened clay and iron oxides that can accumulate around any central object, like a pearl forming around a grain of sand in a geological instant. In the right mineral-rich environment, such as the dry California desert where it was found, a lost spark plug from a prospector's truck could have been completely encased in a convincing stone shell within just a few decades. This case of mistaken identity offers a profound cautionary tale. Our desire to find evidence of the extraordinary can sometimes blind us to simpler, more mundane truths. The Coso artifact is not evidence of a lost technological age, but rather a testament to the remarkable speed and power of natural chemical processes. It reminds us that the context of an artifact is everything, and that rigorous analysis must always temper our initial excitement. This object remains a staple in discussions of so-called out-of-place artifacts, not because it is genuinely mysterious, but because it perfectly illustrates how easily a combination of wishful thinking and a misunderstanding of geology can create an enigma from an ordinary piece of history. How many other puzzles of the past might be solved by taking a more patient, scientific look? This journey from a spark plug to a different kind of mystery leads us to an object whose true purpose was hidden not in stone, but in plain sight for centuries. High on a stone wall in the Temple of Hathor, a strange and captivating scene is carved into the very rock itself. A large, glass-like bulb seems to be held aloft by a pillar, and inside it, a snake stretches out along its length. A cable appears to run from the base of this object, connecting it to a box that is gripped by a kneeling god, while a baboon-like deity stands guard with a knife in his hand. To our modern eyes, this looks uncannily like an electrical diagram. The bulb could be a Crookes tube, an early form of light bulb, the snake its glowing filament, the cable a wire, and the box a powerful battery. This is the Dendera light, and for proponents of ancient high technology, it is compelling evidence that the Egyptians harnessed electricity to light their dark tombs and temples, explaining the absence of soot from torches in deep, enclosed spaces. The interpretation feels almost intuitive, a clear picture of a technology we recognize. Yet, when we listen to the experts who have dedicated their lives to understanding this culture, a completely different and far richer story emerges. Egyptologists explain that this is not a technical schematic, but a profound mythological scene. The bulb is not a bulb at all, but a representation of a lotus flower from which the serpent god Harsamtis is emerging. In Egyptian belief, the lotus was a powerful symbol of rebirth and creation. As it blossoms each morning from the primordial waters, the serpent is not a filament, but the god himself, a manifestation of life force. The surrounding figures are well-known deities from the Egyptian pantheon, and the entire tableau depicts the moment of cosmic creation, the emergence of order from chaos, a story detailed in religious texts found throughout the temple complex. The box is not a battery, but the sacred primordial mound from which all life sprang. So why do we so readily see a light bulb? This reveals a fascinating tendency in our own modern psyche. We are a society defined by our technology, so we instinctively view the past through that lens, projecting our own inventions and priorities onto cultures that had entirely different ways of seeing the world. We look for complex machinery where they saw divine mystery. We search for literal power sources where they described spiritual energy. The real mystery of the Dendera light is not whether the Egyptians had electricity, but why we are so eager to give them ours, effectively replacing their intricate cosmology with our own blueprint. It forces us to ask if, in our search for advanced technology, we are overlooking the true advanced nature of their thought, a system of symbols and beliefs that sustained a civilization for 3,000 years. This habit of seeing what we want to see, of fitting ancient evidence into a modern box, finds a parallel in the story of an object that was long celebrated as a divine weapon, until a simpler, more human truth was finally brought to light. Deep within the Costa Rican jungle, the past hides in plain sight. Workers clearing land for a banana plantation in the 1930s stumbled upon a sight that defied explanation. Dozens of stone spheres, some as large as 8 feet across, lay half buried in the earth. They were not rough boulders, but objects of breathtaking precision, carved from a hard volcanic rock called gabbro. These are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, the legacy of the Diquis culture, created between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era. Their sizes range from that of a simple baseball to colossal orbs weighing over 16 tons. Many were discovered in groups, arranged in mysterious patterns, lines and triangles and curves that stretch across the landscape. This deliberate placement has led many to wonder if they formed a kind of ancient observatory, their alignments pointing to solstice sunrises or important stars, mapping the heavens on the ground for ritual or calendar purposes. Yet their true function is as polished and multifaceted as the spheres themselves. Archaeologists see them as powerful symbols of social identity. In a society of competing chiefdoms, these immense, labor-intensive objects were likely declarations of power and territory. A chief who could command the resources and skill to produce and transport such a sphere was broadcasting his authority for all to see. They might have been focal points for community gatherings, sacred talismans used in ceremonies, or physical representations of celestial bodies in a complex cosmological model. The creation process alone was a monumental act of communal will. Using only stone tools, artisans would have first rough-shaped a large boulder by pecking at it with other, harder rocks. Then, through endless hours of grinding and polishing with sand and water, they achieved an almost perfect sphericity. The level of geometric understanding and patience required to create such forms without modern measuring tools is staggering. Each sphere represents generations of knowledge passed down and a profound investment of human effort. The tragedy is that their original contexts have been largely lost. When the spheres were rediscovered, many were rolled away from their original positions by plantation workers, or even dynamited by treasure hunters believing they contained gold. This displacement has ripped them from their stories, making it incredibly difficult to decode the specific messages they were meant to convey. Were they a map of a clan's ancestry, a record of a peace treaty, or a physical prayer for fertility? We are left with only the silent, perfect stones. Their smooth surfaces reflect our own questions back at us. Why would a people pour so much of their lives into these forms? They are a permanent reminder that value is not always practical. Sometimes the greatest meaning is found in creating something beautiful, something enduring, something that speaks across centuries not with words but with perfect, mysterious shape. This human drive to arrange objects with purpose, to mark the land with meaning, finds a powerful echo in another ancient site, where the stones are not sculpted by hand, but chosen and placed with an intention we are still striving to understand. The sheer scale of the moai is almost incomprehensible until you see them from behind. For centuries, the world knew these stone giants only as disembodied heads, their immense features staring blankly from the island's slopes. The truth, uncovered by archaeologists carefully excavating the soil, is far more astonishing. These are complete figures with elongated torsos, arms carved in delicate relief, and hands resting on their stomachs, some buried so deep that their full height doubles what is visible above ground. Recent digs have revealed that their hidden backs are not blank. They are covered in intricate petroglyphs, symbolic carvings that may tell the story of the ancestor each moai represents. This transforms them from simple monuments into profound narratives set in stone. Their purpose was deeply spiritual. The Rapa Nui people carved them to honor their ancestral chiefs, believing these figures acted as vessels for mana, a potent spiritual energy that would protect and bless the living community. This is why they all face inland, their watchful eyes turned not toward the sea, but toward the villages of their descendants, a permanent, stone-faced guardianship. But this spiritual ambition demanded a colossal physical effort. How do you move a statue weighing as much as 80 tons across miles of rugged terrain? The answer lies in a feat of communal engineering that still inspires debate. One compelling theory, supported by oral traditions and experimental archaeology, suggests the Rapa Nui used a technique that made the statues appear to walk. Teams of workers would use ropes to rock the moai from side to side, edging it forward centimeter by centimeter in a coordinated, rhythmic motion. It was not a task for a few individuals. It was a society-wide project, a physical manifestation of shared belief and social cohesion. The entire community would have been involved, from the master carvers at the Rono Raraku quarry to the teams hauling the final product to its ceremonial platform. Yet, this very ambition may have contributed to the society's decline. The island's ecosystem was fragile, and the constant demand for trees to make ropes and sleds, coupled with the need to feed a large, organized workforce, likely led to severe deforestation and soil erosion. The story of the moai is not just one of incredible achievement, but also a poignant lesson in balance. It forces us to ask what happens when a culture's spiritual and artistic drive pushes against the hard limits of its environment. These silent sentinels stand as a powerful reminder of human ingenuity, but also of its potential cost, a monument to both what we can build and what we might lose in the process. That single shipwreck off the coast of Turkey is a frozen moment in time. In 1982, a sponge diver's routine plunge revealed a shape on the seafloor that was not rock or reef, but the ghost of a wooden vessel. This was the Ulubyoran shipwreck, a merchant ship that sank in the late 14th century before the Common Era. and its cargo hold was a direct line to the bustling, interconnected world of the late Bronze Age. The seabed was not scattered with treasure chests, but with the raw ingredients of civilization itself. There were piles of copper ingots, shaped like stretched ox hides for easy transport, and alongside them the crucial counterpart, rarer tin ingots. Mixed together, these metals would be smelted into the bronze that gave the era its name, used for everything from weapons to ceremonial vessels. But the ship carried far more than metal. There were large, translucent glass ingots in vibrant cobalt blue and lavender, ebony logs from Africa, and carefully packed elephant tusks and hippopotamus teeth for carving luxury items. This was not a random collection of goods. It was a meticulously planned cargo, a wholesale delivery for the palaces and temples of a dozen different kingdoms. Among these bulk materials, personal treasures hinted at the human stories on board. A gold scarab bearing the name of Queen Nefertiti was discovered, an object of such high status it could have been a diplomatic gift from the Egyptian court or the prized possession of a noble passenger. The ship itself was a marvel of its time, its hull constructed with advanced mortise and tenon joints, where perfectly carved wooden pegs locked planks together with a strength that allowed it to brave the open Mediterranean. Analyzing this single cargo list is like reading a map of ancient international relations. The copper likely came from Cyprus, the tin possibly from as far away as Afghanistan, the ebony from Nubia, and the glass and pottery from Canaan and Mycenaean Greece. This vessel was a floating marketplace and a diplomatic envoy, its journey connecting the great powers of the age in a web of commerce and mutual dependence. Its sinking was an economic catastrophe for someone, a loss that rippled across the known world. How did such a ship navigate without charts, relying on the stars and the knowledge of its captain to connect these distant ports? The Uluburan shipwreck proves that globalization is not a modern invention. It reveals a world already knit together by trade routes, where the fates of empires were linked by the voyages of ships like this one, carrying not just goods, but the very threads of culture and power across the sea. This tangible evidence of ancient exchange finds a curious parallel in an object that was not carried on a ship, but was itself a vessel for a different kind of connection. A young shepherd's stray stone shattering pottery in a desert cave echoed with a significance he could never have guessed. That chance moment in 1947 unveiled one of the greatest textual discoveries of all time, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hidden in the dry, still air of caves near the Dead Sea, these ancient Jewish manuscripts had survived, perfectly preserved for 2,000 years. They were not a single book, but an entire library, a collection of hundreds of texts written on leather and papyrus, dating from the 3rd century before the Common Era to the 1st century of the Common Era. Within these fragile pages were copies of biblical books like Isaiah and Deuteronomy, but also sectarian rule books, poetic hymns, and startling apocalyptic visions that spoke of a final, cosmic war between the forces of light and darkness. This library offered a priceless window into the world of Second Temple Judaism, a period of intense religious ferment and diversity that formed the backdrop for the rise of early Christianity. The scrolls are most commonly linked to a devout, ascetic Jewish sect known as the Essenes, who may have lived in the nearby settlement of Qumran. It is easy to picture their community as a scholarly haven, where scribes meticulously copied sacred texts, preserving their unique interpretations of law and prophecy. Yet, other scholars propose a different story, suggesting the caves were not a living library but a geniza, a sacred hiding place for texts too holy to destroy, where scrolls were secretly safeguarded by various groups fleeing the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 Common Era. This theory paints a more urgent picture of people desperately trying to save their most precious writings from an advancing army. Why does this distinction matter? Because it changes the very nature of the scrolls. Were they the curated canon of a single, isolated community, or a random cross-section of Jerusalem's spiritual life buried in a time of crisis? The content of the scrolls themselves has fundamentally reshaped biblical scholarship. They provided texts of the Hebrew Bible a full 1,000 years older than any previously known, allowing scholars to see how the books were copied and transmitted over centuries with remarkable accuracy. They also revealed a world of competing Jewish beliefs, with different groups each claiming to be the true inheritors of God's covenant, awaiting their own messiahs and interpreting scripture in unique ways. These writings capture the palpable hopes and fears of a people living under the shadow of the Roman eagle, yearning for divine intervention and a new age. Their words hidden away in clay jars were a desperate act of preservation, a message in a bottle thrown into the deep well of time, waiting for a future generation to find them and hear their story. This profound desire to communicate across the ages finds a curious parallel in a different kind of message, one not written on parchment, but carved into a mysterious stone that has defied translation for centuries. A dark granite slab pulled from the rubble of a forgotten fort held the answer to a mystery that had taunted scholars for over 1,000 years. When French soldiers in Egypt uncovered this stone in 1799, they could not have known they were handling the key to an entire civilization's voice. The Rosetta Stone, created in 196 before the Common Era, presents a single priestly decree honoring Pharaoh Ptolemy V, meticulously inscribed in 3 distinct scripts. At the top, the elegant and enigmatic hieroglyphs, the sacred writing of the temples. In the middle, the flowing cursive of Demotic, the common script of everyday life in Egypt. And at the bottom, the well-understood language of its Greek rulers. This was the master key. For the first time, researchers had a clear bilingual, or rather trilingual, bridge. They could read the Greek and use it to crack the codes of the other 2 texts. For 23 years, brilliant minds across Europe wrestled with the puzzle, but it was the French scholar Jean-François Champollion who made the final, breathtaking leap. He realized that hieroglyphs were not merely symbolic pictures, as had been believed for centuries. They were a sophisticated hybrid system, combining logographic signs that represented whole words or concepts with phonetic signs that spelled out the sounds of the Egyptian language, much like the letters in an alphabet. This was the revolutionary insight that finally unlocked the door. The stone's text itself is a fascinating piece of political propaganda. It details the young pharaoh's generous tax concessions and gifts to the powerful temples, a clear effort by the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty to secure the crucial support of the native Egyptian priesthood. It is a snapshot of a delicate cultural negotiation, a Greek king using the traditional language of Egyptian divine kingship to legitimize his rule. Without this single slab of granite, our understanding of ancient Egypt would still be trapped in silence. We would have no access to the prayers carved inside pyramids, the historical accounts on temple walls, or the personal letters written on papyrus. The entire 3,000-year narrative of the Nile would remain a beautiful but mute gallery of images. The Rosetta Stone stands as a permanent monument to the power of cross-cultural dialogue and the profound importance of preserving multilingual records. It proves that a single artifact can become a universal translator, bridging millennia in an instant. How many other ancient scripts, like the undeciphered linear, are of the Minoans or the Proto-Elamite script of ancient Iran, still await their own key, their stories patiently waiting in the dark for their own Champollion to listen? This quest to unlock a coded past leads us to another artifact, one whose cryptic symbols were not meant for a king, but for a machine. The soil of a Shaanxi province field yielded far more than water in 1974. Farmers digging a well struck upon a hardened clay head, its stoic face staring back from the darkness. This single chance discovery unearthed one of the most ambitious artistic and military projects ever conceived, the terracotta army of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Buried in vast subterranean pits, this silent legion was arranged in perfect battle formation, a complete imperial guard frozen in time to protect their ruler in the afterlife. The sheer scale is breathtaking: an estimated 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, and 670 horses, alongside officials, acrobats, and musicians, all crafted to serve the emperor for eternity. Each soldier stands life-sized and astonishingly individual. Their faces were meticulously sculpted with unique features, hairstyles, and expressions, reflecting the vast diversity of the peoples unified under the Qin Empire. They were not always the muted clay we see today. When first placed in the pits, every figure was painted in vibrant, lifelike colors, and they gripped real, functional bronze weapons, spears, swords, and crossbows, making them a genuine, armed force for the next world. The creation of this army was an immense logistical feat, a form of early mass production. Workshops operated like factories, producing standardized body parts like torsos, legs, and arms that could be assembled into a complete soldier. Yet the final personal touch was crucial. Artisans would then add the unique facial features and hairstyles, and many even signed their work, leaving their own small mark on immortality. Why would an emperor commit such staggering resources to a project no living person was meant to see? Qin Shi Huang was a man obsessed with power and eternity. He had unified China through brutal conquest and sought to extend his rule beyond death itself. He feared the afterlife and believed this army would protect him from the spirits of the kingdoms he had destroyed and allow him to reign in the next world as he had in this one. This clay battalion is the ultimate expression of a ruler's ambition, a permanent monument to his authority that was meant to last forever. It makes you wonder what other extravagant preparations for the afterlife might still lie hidden, waiting beneath the earth. That small, square seal carved from soapstone fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. Unearthed from the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in the 1920s, it depicts a powerfully built humped bull, its muscles rendered with a realism that feels alive even today. But it is the line of sharp, geometric symbols running along the top that holds the real mystery. This seal is not unique. Thousands like it have been recovered from the ruins of the Indus Valley civilization, a society that thrived for 2,000 years across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. These people built some of the world's first planned cities with sophisticated drainage systems and standardized bricks, yet they left behind no grand temples or royal palaces, just these countless small inscribed stones. The seals were practical tools of a complex economy. A merchant would press one into a soft clay tag attached to a bundle of cloth or a pottery jar, leaving behind his unique mark, a signature of ownership or origin for goods traveling along vast trade routes that stretched to Mesopotamia. The images they chose are a window into their world, showcasing animals like elephants, rhinoceroses, and tigers, and sometimes even mythical beasts standing proudly beside the cryptic script. But after more than a century of study, we still cannot read a single word. The Indus script is one of the last great undeciphered writing systems on Earth. The challenge is immense. The inscriptions are frustratingly short, most containing only 4 or 5 symbols, offering linguists no long text to analyze for recurring patterns. There is no equivalent of the Rosetta Stone, no bilingual inscription that can act as a key to unlock its meaning. Is it a true language recording the speech of its people, or is it a system of non-linguistic symbols like heraldic coats of arms or property marks? Without being able to read their words, the voice of this entire civilization remains silent. We can see their astonishing engineering, we can hold their beautifully crafted artifacts, but we cannot know their thoughts, their laws, or their stories. What profound knowledge about one of humanity's first experiments in urban living is locked within these tiny stones? This enduring puzzle connects to another artifact that carries an equally unreadable message, a metallic text that has fueled centuries of speculation about lost worlds and hidden treasures. A hidden gallery of masterpieces lay undisturbed for 17,000 years until a dog's disappearance led 4 teenagers to a crack in a hillside near the French village of Lascaux. Venturing inside with a makeshift lamp, they illuminated walls that exploded with life. Herds of aurochs, horses, and stags galloped across the stone in a breathtaking display of prehistoric artistry, their forms rendered with a realism and dynamism that feels almost alive. These Paleolithic artists worked with a sophisticated palette of natural pigments, grinding iron oxide for reds and yellows and using charcoal for deep blacks. They applied the paint with brushes made from animal hair, used their hands as pads, and even blew pigment through hollow bones to create soft, airbrushed effects. This was not mere doodling, it was a conscious, skilled act of creation deep within the earth. Why journey so far into the darkness to paint? The most compelling theories suggest these caves were sacred spaces, perhaps central to rituals. Some researchers propose the images were a form of hunting magic, a way to assert control over the animals essential for survival by capturing their essence on the wall. Others see the footprints and artifacts found in the caves as evidence of shamanistic journeys, where the flickering torchlight would have made the animals seem to move, allowing the painter or ritual participant to cross into a spirit world. There is even a fascinating idea that certain groupings of animals correspond to constellations, turning the cave into a prehistoric planetarium for tracking celestial cycles. Yet perhaps the simplest explanation is also the most profound. These early humans felt a deep, intrinsic need to create, to leave a mark, to express their awe and understanding of the magnificent, dangerous world they inhabited. The connection they felt to the natural world was so absolute that channeling it into art was a fundamental human impulse. This profound need to create and communicate is a thread that runs unbroken through human history. The very presence of these paintings forced a difficult modern dilemma. The breath and body heat of thousands of visitors began to damage the delicate microclimate, causing destructive algae and calcite to spread across the ancient artwork like a veil. To save Lascaux, the original cave was sealed from the public, a heartbreaking but necessary act of preservation. In its place, an incredible facsimile, Lascaux II, was painstakingly created, allowing visitors to experience the wonder without harming the irreplaceable originals. This act itself is a testament to the enduring power of these images, that we would go to such lengths to preserve an echo from the deep past. These artists, working by the faint light of a grease lamp, were not just depicting their world, they were trying to understand their place within it through the language of art. This primal drive to use symbols and images to make sense of existence finds a powerful, and much more recent, expression in an object that was both a scientific tool and a philosophical statement. Its bronze surface still holds the shimmer of ancient stars. In 1999, 2 treasure hunters sweeping a forested hill in Germany found more than they bargained for. Their metal detectors led them to a cache of bronze swords and axes, but the true prize was a seemingly unremarkable bronze disc, green with age. After a police sting recovered the looted artifacts, experts began to clean it and found a breathtaking sight. The disk was inlaid with gold symbols, a celestial map depicting a crescent moon, a full sun or full moon, and a scatter of stars, including a tight cluster that immediately caught their attention. This was the Nebra sky disk, and scientific analysis dated it to approximately 1600 years before the Common Era, making it the oldest known realistic representation of the cosmos anywhere in the world. This was not a piece of decorative art. It was a sophisticated astronomical instrument, a portable observatory that could be held in your hands. The arrangement of the stars is not random. That distinct cluster of 7 stars is almost certainly the Pleiades, a star group that has been used by countless ancient cultures, from the Greeks to the Maya, as a seasonal marker. Its appearance and disappearance in the night sky signaled the time for planting and the time for harvest. The disk's genius, however, lies in its ability to harmonize time. By aligning the positions of the sun and moon with this star cluster, its creators could synchronize the lunar calendar with the solar year. This was a critical problem for ancient societies because a lunar year is about 11 days shorter than a solar year. Without correction, the seasons would slowly drift through the calendar, causing chaos for farmers. The Nebra sky disk provided the solution, a way to keep the lunar months in step with the solar seasons, ensuring that rituals were performed at the correct time and crops were sown when the earth was ready. The disk itself tells a story of evolution. It was not made in a single moment. Initially, it held just the sun, the moon, and the stars. Later, someone added 2 golden arcs along the sides, which are thought to represent the horizon, marking the sun's rising and setting points at the solstices. Then another addition, a curved band at the bottom, was interpreted as a solar boat, a mythical vessel that carried the sun across the sky or through the underworld at night. This layering of meaning shows the disk was a living tool, its purpose refined over generations. The fact it was found buried on a hilltop with valuable weapons suggests it was a sacred offering, perhaps deposited during a ceremony at a site that was already known as a place of celestial power. The hill, the Mittelberg, aligns with a mountain peak where the sun sets on the summer solstice, a perfect natural observatory. So what kind of person held this disk? It would have been a priest astronomer, a keeper of time who wielded immense authority. He would have used this object to demonstrate his connection to the gods of the sky, to predict the turning of the seasons, and to guide his entire community in its most vital rhythms. The knowledge required to create it was not simple. It demanded centuries of patient night sky observation, a deep understanding of cyclical patterns, and the metallurgical skill to cast bronze and work gold with precision. This single object shatters the image of the Bronze Age as a time of simple farmers. It reveals a society with astronomers who mapped the heavens, not with stone circles, but with a beautiful, functional machine. How many other such devices, perhaps made of wood or leather, have simply returned to the Earth, leaving no trace? The Nebra sky disk is a rare survivor, a bronze prayer to the cosmos that connects us directly to the minds of people who looked up at the same stars and saw not random lights, but a clock, a calendar, and a divine guide for human life. It proves that the drive to chart the heavens is one of humanity's oldest and most universal instincts. The Great Sphinx of Giza is a lion-bodied guardian carved directly from the bedrock of the plateau. Its pharaohs head a timeless silhouette against the rising sun. For 45 centuries, its limestone form has faced the dawn, though the vibrant paint that once adorned it and the ceremonial beard that may have graced its chin have long since surrendered to the desert wind. Conventional Egyptology places its creation during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the Second Great Pyramid, seeing the Sphinx as an integral part of his funerary complex, a divine protector carved in his own image. Yet the stones themselves tell a story that some believe challenges this timeline. Geologist Robert Skock and others have pointed not to the work of human hands, but to the marks left by the sky. They argue that the deep, vertical fissures covering the Sphinx's body and enclosure walls are not the result of sand and wind erosion, but of heavy, sustained rainfall, a weather pattern that vanished from Egypt thousands of years before Khafre ever ruled. This water erosion hypothesis suggests the Sphinx could be far older, a relic from a time when the Sahara was a green savanna, potentially built by a lost pre-dynastic civilization whose name we do not even know. The debate is a stark reminder that the history we accept is often written by the victors, while the land itself holds a different, older chronicle. Adding to the complexity is the Sphinx's own layered skin. Modern conservation work has peeled back the centuries to reveal a patchwork of repairs. You can see the distinct stonework of New Kingdom pharaohs like Thutmose IV, who famously dreamed the Sphinx promised him the throne if he cleared away the sand that choked it. You can find the rougher, more utilitarian patches added during the Roman period. This means that for over 3,000 years, the Sphinx has been an object of such profound importance that generation after generation felt compelled to mend its wounds, to preserve its silent vigil. Its primary role was undoubtedly spiritual, a colossal embodiment of the pharaoh's power and a guardian linked to the sun god Ra. But the most tantalizing questions are not about what stands above the sand, but what might lie beneath it. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected anomalies, suggesting possible cavities and tunnels under the Sphinx's massive pores and within its core. Could these be natural fissures in the limestone, or are they man-made chambers, sealed libraries holding records from a forgotten age that could rewrite human history? The Sphinx keeps its secrets locked in stone, a riddle not just of form, but of time itself. This monumental mystery of a guardian hiding its true age finds a parallel in an artifact that also stands as a testament to ancient engineering, not carved from rock, but forged in metal and ambition. Deep in the humid Mexican jungle, workers in the 19th century uncovered faces of stone staring back from the earth. These were the Olmec colossal heads, each one a monumental portrait carved from a single block of volcanic basalt, some weighing as much as 20 tons. The civilization that created them, the Olmec, flourished over 3,000 years ago and is considered by many to be the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They left behind no written records that we can read, so these immense sculptures are their most powerful voice. Each head is a distinct individual, a powerful leader depicted with a unique expression, a helmet-like headdress, and strong, naturalistic features including broad noses and full lips. They are not generic idols but portraits of specific people, immortalized in stone on a truly gargantuan scale. The sheer effort involved in their creation is a story in itself. The basalt for these heads was quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains, and somehow the Olmec transported these multi-ton blocks over 50 miles through swamps and jungle. They likely used a combination of rollers, rafts on rivers, and the raw muscle of hundreds, if not thousands, of laborers, a logistical feat that speaks to a highly organized and powerful society. Why would a culture dedicate such immense resources to creating these giants? Most archaeologists believe they represent powerful rulers, perhaps deified after death, or celebrated ball players who achieved a legendary status. They were symbols of authority and identity, placed in prominent positions within their ceremonial centers to project power and lineage to all who saw them. Yet the story of these heads has a mysterious and violent end. Many were found deliberately toppled, their faces mutilated, and some were even carefully buried in long, straight lines. This was not accidental damage from the passage of time. it appears to be a systematic act of desecration. Was this the work of invaders from a rival city-state, erasing the memory of a defeated dynasty? Or was it an internal revolution, where a new ruling faction sought to symbolically destroy the power of the old leaders? Perhaps it was a ritual act, a way of retiring the spiritual energy of the statue after the ruler's dynasty had ended. The heads stand as a testament to both the creative power and the turbulent politics of a lost world. Their silent, damaged faces make us wonder about the rise and fall of their civilization. What internal conflicts or external pressures led the Olmec to eventually abandon their great cities, leaving only these colossal stone witnesses behind? Another silent script waits on an island famous for its giant stone watchers. When European missionaries arrived on Easter Island in the 1860s, they made a discovery almost as startling as the moai themselves. In the islanders' possession were wooden tablets, carefully polished and covered from edge to edge with thousands of finely carved symbols. This was Rongo Rongo, a unique and beautiful writing system found nowhere else in the world. The missionaries, viewing the script as a pagan artifact, promptly convinced the islanders to burn most of the tablets, an act of cultural destruction that robbed us of an entire library. Only about 24 authentic tablets survived this purge, and today they hold a message that has been perfectly silent for over a century. The glyphs themselves are a miniature world of forms. You see stylized human figures in postures of dance or ritual, birds with curved beaks, plants like the sweet potato that was vital to the islanders' survival, and a host of abstract geometric shapes. They were not merely scratched onto the wood. Each symbol was painstakingly incised using a sliver of obsidian or a sharpened shark's tooth, a testament to the immense value and care given to their creation. The text flows in a pattern that adds to its mystery, a method scholars call reverse Baustrophedon. To read it, you would start at the bottom left corner, move along a line to the right, then physically rotate the tablet 180 degrees to read the next line, which continues from right to left. This flipping motion, turning the object over and over, would have been part of the ritual of reading itself, but what story do these turning lines tell? The most compelling theories suggest they recorded the things most vital to the Rapa Nui people. They could be sacred genealogies, tracing the lineage of chiefs back to the gods and the original Polynesian settlers. They might contain creation chants that describe how the world was formed from the void, or complex astronomical observations used to navigate the vast ocean or time their religious ceremonies. This would connect Rongo Rongo directly to the broader oral traditions of Polynesia, where such knowledge was passed down through memorized chants. Yet, the script's greatest tragedy is that it was not just forgotten, it was actively erased. The social collapse triggered by environmental strain was brutally completed by the arrival of European slavers and diseases. The population was decimated, and with them died the last trained scribes, the elders who held the key to this written language. Rongo Rongo is a heartbreaking rarity in human history, one of the very few writing systems ever to be independently invented, only to be completely lost before it could be fully understood. Modern technology, from high-resolution digital imaging to complex linguistic algorithms, has been applied to the tablets, searching for a pattern that might finally break the code. So far, the script has resisted all efforts. The loss of the Rongo Rongo scribes feels like a door being permanently locked. What profound knowledge about this isolated, ingenious culture died with them? Their silence is a permanent reminder of how fragile our connection to the past can be, and how a world of understanding can vanish in a single generation. This linguistic void finds a parallel in another set of symbols, one carved not on wood, but on a mysterious metal sheet that has fueled its own legends for centuries. The earth of a Romanian burial site held a secret far older than any king or empire. In 1961, archaeologists carefully excavated a Neolithic grave, uncovering the cremated remains of an individual accompanied by 3 small, unassuming clay tablets. These were the Tartaria tablets, and their surfaces were covered with a series of carefully incised symbols. You see crosses, swirling lines, and a figure that looks almost like a goat, a collection of marks that some researchers passionately argue is the world's oldest known writing system. Dated to approximately 5,300 years before the Common Era, these artifacts from the Vincha culture would predate the earliest Mesopotamian cuneiform by over 1,000 years. The implications are staggering, suggesting the spark of literacy may have ignited in the Balkans long before it flourished in the Middle East. Yet, this revolutionary claim is met with deep skepticism. The primary obstacle is the tablet's profound isolation. The symbols do not appear in any longer, repetitive sequence that would allow linguists to analyze grammar or syntax. They are a brief, silent message without any context or parallel. Could these marks truly be a script, or are they something else entirely, perhaps powerful ritual symbols, a shaman's personal notation, or simply ownership marks denoting a family or clan? Their discovery alongside a cremation and other ceremonial objects strongly suggests they were part of a sacred funerary practice. They might have been amulets meant to protect the soul on its journey, or tokens representing a vow or a prayer to forgotten deities. The central figure on one tablet, often described as a goat, could be a spirit animal, a totem of a specific community. This interpretation paints a picture of a deeply spiritual society, using symbols to navigate the relationship between the living and the dead, a form of communication that is symbolic rather than linguistic. So, are we looking at the birthplace of writing, or are we witnessing the sophisticated use of proto-writing, a system of symbols that conveys meaning but does not record language? The Tartaria tablets refuse to give a definitive answer. They are a Rorschach test for historians, reflecting our own deep desire to find the origins of complex thought. If they are writing, our entire understanding of cultural development in prehistoric Europe would need a radical rewrite. But if they are not, they remain a breathtaking window into the symbolic mind of our Neolithic ancestors, proving that the human need to mark, to signify, and to communicate is an ancient primal drive. This enigma of prehistoric symbols carved in clay finds a later, yet equally mysterious, counterpart in an object that was not meant for a grave, but for a library. A farmer's plow strikes stone in the Minnesota soil, unearthing a narrative that would ignite a century of debate. In 1898, Olof Oman discovered a large slab of Greywacke sandstone, its face covered in strange, angular characters. When translated, the runes told a harrowing tale of Norse explorers, a group of 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on a journey from Vinland far to the west. The inscription spoke of a tragedy, a day of massacre where 10 men were left bloodied and dead, and it was dated to the year 1362. If genuine, this Kensington runestone was a historical thunderclap, proving that Scandinavian travelers had penetrated deep into the heart of North America, a full 130 years before Columbus set sail. The stone became an instant local sensation, a tangible link to a glorious Viking past for a community of Scandinavian immigrants eager to root their new American identity in a brave history of exploration. Yet from the very beginning, scholars raised profound doubts. The runes themselves were the first clue. Experts noted that the characters were a strange mixture, blending runic forms from different centuries and regions in a way that no authentic medieval inscription ever did. The language, too, seemed off. It contained grammatical constructions and words that felt distinctly modern, more akin to the Swedish spoken by 19th century farmers than the Old Norse of the 14th century. It was as if the carver had studied runic alphabets from a book, but lacked the living, breathing knowledge of how those runes were actually used in the Middle Ages. The timing of the discovery also fueled skepticism. The stone emerged at the peak of Scandinavian immigration to the Midwest, a period of intense cultural pride when communities were actively building a mythic connection to their ancestral homelands. What better way to stake a claim in the New World than to discover that your people had been there first? The stone offered a powerful foundation story, transforming immigrant farmers into the inheritors of a continent their supposed ancestors had explored. So why does the stone still hold such power over the local community, displayed in its own museum and defended by generations? Artifacts are not just objects, they are vessels for identity. The Kensington runestone provides a profound sense of place and belonging, turning a Minnesota field into a site of epic historical significance. It represents a story people want to be true, a narrative of courage and exploration that validates their own journey and struggles in a new land. The debate over the stone is a conflict between two different ways of knowing, one rooted in academic evidence and the other in the powerful human need for a meaningful past. This contested message from a Minnesota farm prepares us for another artifact that hints at even earlier and equally debated transoceanic voyages. That very parchment seemed to rewrite the history of exploration. When Yale University announced the Vinland map to the world in 1965, it created an academic earthquake. Here was a medieval-style chart, drawn on what appeared to be ancient calfskin, depicting the North Atlantic with stunning clarity. Most astonishingly, it showed a rugged landmass west of Greenland, explicitly labeled in Latin as Vinland. If genuine, this map was not merely an artifact, it was a smoking gun, proving that knowledge of the North American continent had existed in Europe long before Christopher Columbus was even born. It suggested that the Viking voyages, once thought to be isolated incidents, had somehow filtered into the geographic understanding of the medieval world. The implications were staggering, threatening to topple one of the foundational narratives of the modern age. But the initial euphoria was soon met with the cold, hard gaze of science. Researchers subjected the map to every test they could devise. The parchment itself was indeed old, dating to around 1440. The problem lay in the ink. Advanced spectroscopic analysis revealed the presence of a specific crystalline form of titanium dioxide called anatase. This compound is a key ingredient in 20th century commercial inks, but it is not found in any known medieval inks. To most experts, this was the death knell for the map's authenticity. The conclusion seemed inescapable. Someone in the modern era had taken a blank piece of genuine old parchment and drawn a brilliant, deceptive history onto it. Yet the story refuses to die. A small but persistent group of scholars argues for alternative explanations. They suggest the anatase could be a rare medieval contaminant, perhaps from the sand used to blot the ink, or that the map is a meticulous copy made in the 20th century from a now-lost original. These theories, while not widely accepted, highlight the map's enduring power to captivate. Its origins are a perfect mystery, with a provenance full of frustrating gaps that emerged just as public fascination with Viking explorers and the upcoming Columbus quincentenary was reaching a fever pitch. So why would anyone go to such elaborate lengths to create a fake? The motives are as layered as the ink itself. It could be a simple, if brilliant, hoax designed for fame and profit. Or it could be something more poignant, a forger's deep desire to make a cherished historical theory into a tangible reality, to literally draw the Vikings into the center of the world's map. Forgeries like this do more than just deceive. They challenge our relationship with the past itself. They force us to confront how much of history is built on trust in the objects we unearth, and how desperately we want to hold proof of the stories that capture our imagination. This delicate line between a coveted truth and a convincing lie brings us to another artifact whose glittering surface hides a deeply contested past. A Taoist monk named Wang Yuanlu was simply clearing sand from a corridor in the Mogao caves when he noticed a crack in a wall. Behind it was a small, sealed chamber, a hidden library that had been forgotten for nearly 1,000 years. Inside, from floor to ceiling, were tens of thousands of manuscripts, scrolls, and paintings, a treasure trove of history preserved by the dry desert air. Among this incredible collection of Buddhist sutras and historical documents was a seemingly mundane alchemical text. It contained a formula for a mixture of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, a combination we now recognize as gunpowder. This was not a recipe for war, but for something far more spiritual and spectacular. The Taoist alchemists who wrote it were seeking elixirs for immortality, and in their experiments, they discovered a substance that could produce flashes of fire and thunderous noise, perfect for rituals intended to ward off evil spirits and create ceremonial fireworks. This was the 9th century during China's Tang dynasty, and this manuscript provides the earliest known written record of the chemical recipe that would reshape global history. For centuries, this knowledge remained largely within the sphere of ceremony and entertainment. It was used in fireworks to celebrate festivals and in simple incendiaries, a powerful but contained secret. The cave itself, known as Library Cave Number 17, was likely sealed around the beginning of the 11th century, a protective act by monks who feared an invasion that would destroy their sacred texts. By walling up their entire library, they unintentionally created a time capsule, saving this revolutionary formula from being lost forever. The journey of gunpowder from that sealed cave to the battlefields of the world is a story of unintended consequences. Through the bustling trade routes of the Silk Road, the knowledge slowly traveled westward. Arab scholars and merchants acquired the formula, referring to saltpeter as Chinese snow. By the 13th century, recipes for gunpowder appeared in Arabic texts, and its use in simple grenades and rockets began to transform warfare in the Middle East. From there, it spread into Europe, where it would eventually lead to the development of cannons and firearms, dismantling the age of castles and knights. This evolution from a spiritual tool to a weapon of mass destruction forces a profound question. How many other world-altering technologies began as something entirely different, their destructive potential hidden within a peaceful or ritualistic purpose? The sealed cave at Dunhuang reminds us that the most pivotal discoveries can lie dormant for centuries, their true impact only revealed by the slow turning of history's pages. This ancient formula for controlled fire connects us to another artifact, one that represents a different kind of technological leap, a machine designed not for destruction, but for the intricate calculation of celestial motion. A gleaming chest of gold and acacia wood carried a presence that could shake the very foundations of the world. The Ark of the Covenant was far more than a sacred reliquary. It was described as a physical throne for the divine, a conduit for a power so immense it could obliterate armies and topple fortress walls. According to the Hebrew Bible, it housed the stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, but its true significance lay in its function as the focal point of God's presence among the Israelites. The lid, made of solid gold and known as the mercy seat, was flanked by 2 cherubim with wings outstretched, and it was from this space between the celestial figures that the voice of God would speak to Moses. This was not an artifact to be treated lightly. Its power was as dangerous as it was holy, a force that could strike down those who touched it improperly, as the scriptures recount. For centuries, it resided in the inner sanctum of the first temple in Jerusalem, the most sacred object of the Israelite faith. Then, in 586 before the Common Era, the Babylonian army swept in, reducing the temple to rubble. The Ark vanished from all historical records, its fate becoming one of history's greatest enigmas. Where could such a monumental object simply disappear? One of the most enduring traditions places it in the ancient city of Axum, Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims the Ark has been safeguarded for millennia within the chapel of the tablet, next to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. They believe it was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Its protection is entrusted to a single, dedicated guardian, a monk who devotes his entire life to its care, never leaving the shrine grounds and passing his duty to a successor before his own death. No one else is permitted to see it, and no independent scholar or scientist has ever been allowed to verify its presence. This absolute secrecy creates a perfect intersection of unwavering faith and impenetrable mystery. The Ark's potent description has understandably fueled countless quests. Treasure hunters have scoured hidden tunnels beneath Jerusalem. Theorists have proposed it was taken to Egypt or even Europe, and its image has been immortalized in popular culture, most famously in the Indiana Jones film, where it is rediscovered only to be stored away once more in a vast government warehouse. These stories tap into a deep yearning, the desire for a tangible connection to the divine and the thrilling possibility that such a powerful object still exists, hidden just out of sight. So what would its actual discovery mean? For the Jewish faith, it would be a moment of profound messianic significance, a sign of the promised rebuilding of the temple. For Christians, it would be an incredible validation of biblical history, and for the world, it would ignite a firestorm of theological, historical, and scientific debate. The Ark endures in our imagination because it represents the ultimate lost treasure, one that promises not just historical knowledge, but a direct encounter with the sacred. This profound search for a physical vessel of divine power finds a curious parallel in an object revered not for its connection to a single god, but for its embodiment of universal compassion. A golden chalice holds more than wine, it carries the weight of a 1,000-year quest. The Holy Grail began its journey in Scripture as the simple cup Jesus used at the Last Supper, but its legend truly blossomed in the fertile soil of medieval Europe. Knights of the Round Table rode forth on perilous adventures, seeking not just a physical object, but a test of their purity and a source of divine grace that could heal a wounded king and restore a barren land. This was not a treasure hunt for gold, it was a pilgrimage of the soul. The story grew richer with each telling, entwined with Joseph of Arimathea, who is said to have collected Christ's blood in the very same cup and carried it to the misty shores of England, burying it at Glastonbury. Over time, the Grail transformed from a specific Christian relic into a universal symbol of spiritual awakening, an elusive prize representing the ultimate goal of personal transformation and direct communion with the divine. This powerful symbolism has inevitably led to claims of discovery. The Valencia chalice in Spain is a beautiful agate bowl set in precious metals, venerated by many as the true Grail. In Wales, the Nantios cup, a simple, worn wooden bowl, was long believed to hold healing properties for those who drank from it. Yet, despite the fervent hopes and centuries of tradition, none of these artifacts can withstand historical scrutiny. There is no chain of evidence, no scientific proof that can tether these physical objects to the biblical event. The Grail's power was never in its material form, but in the story itself. Its enduring appeal across cultures and centuries speaks to a fundamental human yearning. We are drawn to the idea of a quest, a journey towards something pure and perfect that gives our struggles a higher meaning. The Grail myth resonates because it is a mirror reflecting our own deepest desires for connection to the sacred and our pursuit of ideals that transcend our everyday existence. Why does this particular story hold such power? It reveals that the most compelling artifacts are not always made of stone or metal, but are forged in the human imagination, shaping our understanding of purpose, faith, and the very nature of the quest itself. This symbolic vessel for our highest aspirations finds a curious parallel in an object that represents a very different, yet equally profound, human endeavor, the relentless pursuit of knowledge against all odds. Among the priceless religious manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one document stood out for its sheer metallic strangeness. When scholars carefully unrolled this brittle sheet of copper in 1952, they did not find prayers or prophecies. They found a treasure map. The copper scroll was utterly different from its fragile parchment neighbors, listing 64 locations where immense wealth was supposedly buried, including vast amounts of gold and silver, precious incense, and sacred vessels from the temple in Jerusalem. The instructions were shockingly direct, naming specific landmarks, distances, and even nearby aqueducts and tombs, written in a form of Hebrew that included Greek terms, as if meant for a practical, multilingual audience. This was not a spiritual text, it was an inventory of unimaginable riches, a secret ledger for a kingdom's ransom. The immediate, burning question was whether it recorded a real, desperate act of preservation. In the year 70, as Roman legions besieged Jerusalem, did priests from the temple manage to hide its most sacred treasures, encoding their locations on this durable metal to survive the coming destruction? If so, the scroll represents a final, hopeful act of defiance against total annihilation. Yet, despite numerous searches, not a single item from its extensive list has ever been recovered. This complete lack of physical evidence leads other scholars to a very different conclusion. Perhaps the scroll is not a literal guide, but a work of religious allegory describing symbolic or heavenly treasures. Or maybe it was a piece of creative fiction, a legend written on a material meant to last, its true value lying in the story itself, not in any buried chest. The scroll's dry, administrative tone makes it feel so real, so possible. You can almost feel the urgency of the scribe hammering each letter into the soft copper, believing this list would one day lead to recovery. So where does that leave us? Is the treasure still out there, hidden in a forgotten cistern or beneath the stones of an ancient ruin, waiting for the right person to decode the 2,000-year-old directions? Or is the copper scroll itself the real treasure, a permanent monument to the power of a story, a mystery that continues to promise untold wealth just beyond our grasp? This tantalizing hunt for lost riches finds an echo in a very different kind of artifact, one that was not a map to treasure, but a form of currency that became a global mystery.